Let's see if I can record. All right, that's being recorded. All right. All right, so let's go. We're recording now. Let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully, I got a feeling some people are in the Zoom link, but that's okay too. So let's go ahead and Zara, you had chapter 3. So can you just give us a rundown of chapter 3?
Okay, so starting off it was really interesting reading along the line of language. Okay, there's an echo.
Is the echo? Can you hear? Okay, hold on a second. Let me do this. Hold on. Everybody else hear an echo?
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to start. So as I was saying, the chapter starts with a example of a teacher giving a routine. I think, I wonder, if I'm not mistaken. And the author went over. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm still hearing an echo.
Okay, let me do this. I think it's me. This is the problem with this new system. And like I said, my apologies. I'm just trying to test things out to see which one I'm going to go with. But I'm probably just going to stick with Zoom.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, go ahead. Zara, try it now.
Yeah, okay.
No. Hold on. Hold on. Try now, Zara.
Okay, so the whole chapter discusses key language moves, or the language moves, which is kind of interesting. It gives us depth of 6 key language moves, but then at the end of the chapter, you'd notice that there are more, not only those that he mentioned. What I found interesting was a language of mindfulness and the language of thinking, or noticing and naming. So when you give a routine, or when you give an activity in class, it's really important for the student to know what kind of routine you're using, or what kind of activity, by giving it a name, or um, explaining it clearly, as I kind of understood from language of thinking. So this is something that I kind of neglect using in class. So having it in mind, and knowing how powerful it is for a student to know the name of the routine, or the name of the strategy, or the activity, for them later on to use it inside of the class. The other thing, which is the language of mindfulness, which is amazing. It's because it talks about how it is important for student to understand. Okay, sorry about that. So I was saying, the language of mindfulness. So it talks about uh, conditional and absolute language, which is something that we should, as teacher, we should be using the conditional language. So we need to encourage critical thinking. We need to use language and terminology that tells students that there isn't a clear or a stated answer. So for them to get, or for them to have the uh, how do I put it? For them to have the strength to actually speak their minds, and think outside of the box. So if I ask the student, what is the answer of the problem that we have, it kind of makes the student a little bit hesitant to answer, because that I'm giving him a sign that there is a right answer and a wrong answer. But if I paraphrase it by, what do you think the answer is? So using a language like that, it kind of helps the student to speak their minds and to be comfortable and feel safe in the class room zone.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think the applying the language inside of the classroom is for teachers to understand the impact of words on students and on human beings in general. So we should be wise and think twice before we phrase some words or state some questions to a student, because sometimes asking students, it could give them a negative impact. Body language, he stated also the body language. Some A teacher would widen their eyes when a student says something that is unacceptable, or not even unacceptable, it's just something that she never thought that would happen. That would give a negative response. So this is something that I find interesting, that we should put our mind into it, and notice our body language, notice our language, and the phrases that we choose, the words that we have. So yeah.
Um,
So thank you for listening. But this is a little brief. I hope I made my
no, no, I
information
think
clear.
no. Number one, you hit language right on the head. Um, and I think the most powerful thing that you said was we have to be mindful of what we say so we can encourage cultures of thinking and not repress it.
Mm,
I mean,
that's,
because from I don't know about you guys' culture, and I think Charles can probably identify what I'm about to say. When I was growing up in school, when the teacher would get frustrated with us because we were not the best in behavior, uh, to say the least. But the teachers, I remember teachers using this term: "I got mine, you have to get yours." Remember that, Charles? Did your teachers do that?
Oh, and the follow up was is that while you running your mouth, she got her education. When you gonna
Right.
get one? Mother will
Exactly.
come right in with it.
Right. And I understand the frustration. However, we got to be mindful. We got to look at how damaging that might be to learners. Because I'm 45, about to turn 46, and I still remember teachers saying that. You know. Um, Also, I think about my experience. My experience at the university, as Camaro Devello talks about being about possibilities, and possibilities about being brave. And I love how this connects, how COT connects with the post method condition, because in COT you have particularity, possibility, and practicality, and you can apply all the 8 forces within those three forces, if you will, or three attributes. Let's call them attributes that you need as a teacher: practicality, possibility, and particularity. And um, and language is, in many cases, is about being brave, and it's all about also about being discerning what language to use. And it's particularly important for us because we teach in a very diverse environment. So the teacher who said to us, to Charles and I got mine, you got to get yours. That was a cultural thing that still may not be the best thing to say to any child, but at least that teacher is coming from a cultural, ethnic perspective. Okay. However, as teachers in an environment in a diverse environment such as Saudi Arabia, we don't have that luxury. So we have to be more careful of the language you use and not apply our cultural ethic language, what we might say in an American classroom, and say it in the classroom here in Saudi Arabia, or what you might say in a Pakistani classroom and say it here in Saudi Arabia, because things may get lost and probably will get lost in translation. So we have to most definitely, and then you also got to remember that there's an age difference. Okay, especially because I still feel like I'm 21, but I'm no longer 21, right? So because of the age difference, anything above 4 years, there's an age difference. If you don't believe me, talk to a 14. If a 14-year-old is talking to an 18-year-old, the 14-year-old is going to be extremely intimidated. That's only a 4-year age difference. A 18-year-old trying to talk to a 23-year-old, the 18-year-old is going to be intimidated. That's only a 4-year age difference, or 22, I can't count. It's only 22-year-olds. That's a 4-year age difference. So 4 years. Okay, so if you are 4 years older than your students, 14 years older than your students, 24 years older than your students, you really have to be mindful of the language you use, because even though you may be Pakistani in Karachi, you still have to be mindful of that language and make sure that language, as Azira said, is not impacting the cultures of thinking. So I think language is important. Anyone else want to say anything about language? Because I think Azira gave a great presentation as it relates to language. Anyone else have anything else to say about language? No one else? We had a couple more people come in. A couple more people. Can everyone just introduce themselves who just recently came in, so we know who's in the room? Don't be shy. We're not going to bite you. This is a safe place.
Okay. iPhone is Parveen Hussain.
Oh, Praveen. Okay, Praveen.
Yeah.
Praveen, what chapter were you reviewing?
No, you didn't assign me any.
Oh, okay. Lucky you. Uh, who else is in the room? Who's SMA 115?
Yeah, I'm Amber here.
Amber. Oh, how you doing? Hey,
Yeah,
how you doing, Amber? Long time.
yeah. How are you, Mr. A?
Very good, very good. And so we have Amber. Still trying to figure out who AREL22HN. Okay, guess it's a spectator. HK iPhone. Who's that? We had two iPhones. Who's HK iPhone?
That's me.
Oh, you're logged in twice?
No, it's just one. HK iPhone or HS what? I don't know. I set the username HS, but it's coming HK for some reason, so I don't know.
Okay. So who's SMA115F?
I don't know. That's not me.
Oh no, that's Amber. No, that's Amber. She said that's Amber. All right. All right.
Oh.
Henna, what chapter did you have, Henna?
I had chapter 2.
So you had language also.
No, that's expectations, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry, expectations. So once you talk to us about expectations.
Expectations. We have covered this before as well. That regarding expectations, that when the word expectation comes, most of the teachers get confused and they think about the expectations, their expectation from their students, whereas it's the other way around. And it should be what we expect from ourselves as a teacher, as well as what are the expectations of our students when we go to class. So that is something we need to focus when we are thinking about expectations and we are making our lesson plans and preparing our lessons. So Yep, that's one of the things.
Yeah, I want to add something
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
in expectations. Yeah, actually, when we talk about expectations, we commonly focus on the expectations of students' behavior, like neatness, their work. Like we expect them to be on time, to be prepared, to submit their work on time. These are the things commonly expected from students. It's fine, but here we have to focus on expectations for them. What do we want from them? To support them, to facilitate them, to become an active learner, active thinker, problem solver, and to become in charge of their own learning. Expectations of developing deep understanding, not only acquisition of knowledge. Expectation of students' independence rather than students' dependence. What I expect them to think, to explore. So I let them figure out, so they feel empowered to go and find their answers. And we as a teacher should just guide them, to facilitate them. So yeah, and students in this situation, students won't afraid to share ideas because they know it will be respected. Yeah, I ask them, what make you say that, or what makes you think that, which help me on to get inside their mind and see where they are in their process of thinking, which help me, or which can help us to facilitate their learning. So yeah.
All right. Um. So I guess you hit it right on the head. Expectations is not just about what we expect. And as Hannah just said that, and you said the same thing. It's not about what we expect from our students, more than is what we expect from ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and again, we do have expectations of students. Absolutely, that's how we measure their success and their progress. However, the framework for that should be: what do we expect us from ourselves?
Hmm.
What are our values? And that will allow us to really help students along and ourselves along and our colleagues along with expectations. Anyone else have anything to say about expectations?
If I may,
Sure.
so one of the things that this chapter really got me thinking, chat on page 43 and 44, one of the first things it led off with, the subheading was focus on students on the learning versus the work. And I felt that personally challenged me, because in my classroom, I give them this idea that, one of the things I put on my wall, I was like, hard work beats out talent any day. I'm just paraphrasing. Hard work will beat out talent any day of the week. So when my kids come to class, I model the idea of what you put in is what you get out of it. And this subheading gave a different idea on how to think of it, even challenging the idea of what's wrong of giving them this idea of work. What's wrong with this concept of making them hard workers? The chapter points out the idea of, think about the last time you had a task given to you by your boss. How were you like engaged in it? Were you trying to develop it? Were you trying to put something personal to it, or were you looking to get it done as soon as possible? And when we frame it without learning as just task by task by task, that's exactly how they'll treat it. Things such as mindlessly memorizing vocabulary words for a spelling test, they'll have it the one day. Once they figure it's over, they'll get rid of it. And the idea was, and I'm saying this personally for me, even teaching online at my institution, watching the kids go from other classes compared to, just getting in there and really developing it, would ask these questions. How long does this have to be? Will this be on the test? Is this grade going up on Skyward? Are we getting marked for this? And I hadn't figured out the balance yet. I hadn't figured it out primarily because I don't have a team on it. But the balance of telling them that, hey, there's intrinsic value to it. It might not be monetary, it might not be physical, but to get that out of them, to change that mindset instead of just calling it work, but figuring out something else to call it. And I haven't figured out what to do with that yet. I'm still toiling with that in my spirit for the most part.
Right. So, the way if I could offer something, the way I present it to my students, because I face the same thing, is this is not on Mr. Ray. This is not on the syllabus. On a university level, we're not being graded for this, dude. Why should we do this? So I say, look, this is a skill you're going to need in the emergency room. This is a skill you're going to need when you're going to dealing with clients. This is the skill you're going to need when you want to become chief surgeon or the chief of dentistry. This is a skill you're going to need to work with your colleagues on to solve a medical issue in the hospital. So I try to present it in that way. And again, this brings up important point. And Rich Hart reminds us of this as he goes along in the book, that you're fighting an uphill battle. You're fighting an uphill battle. That you may be working in a place where implementing this is extremely difficult, because you may be in a place where let's just get through the motions. It is work, because that's the mindset of everyone in the building, or the people who have the authority in the building. This is work. Pacing. Let's get it done. Let's get through the book. So in cases like this, I don't want people to get discouraged and say, well, those things that Ray is pushing, it has no value here. It does have value. It has value. Even if it's preparing you for a better situation in the future, it has value. And you'd be surprised the mark that you leave. The very person who pushes back on you and pushes back and says, "This, you're making us do extra work," and yada yada yada, is the very person who may get the biggest benefit out of what you're doing. So in this way, I say fight the good fight, because ultimately this is about essential skills, and no one really has figured this essential skills still out. We're just starting to tap the surface of its essential skills, because we called it soft skills, right? There's nothing soft about these skills. Why? Because we put so much value on those things that are hard skills, being able to do something. But the employers today are telling us they don't want employees with hard skills, because people with hard skills normally have bad habits, and they don't want your bad habits. They want people who have these essential skills that are not soft. When you call them soft, that devalues the skill. So what happens is we have students who think math is more important than English class or social studies, right? Because that's where we put our value. It's something, being able to solve a mathematical equation. So expectations is key. What I want to do also is I want to honor Yasmin, because she did take the time out to write her response for language. Azira. So
Ray, I have.
I keep on calling you Azira. It's Aziza. Aziza. How do you pronounce your name?
Yes.
Is it Azira?
Yeah. The second one is right. Aziza.
Why do
Aziza.
you keep on letting me call you Azira? Aziza. I've known you how many years now? I mispronounce your name. Okay, so here's what Yasmin says. She says that, what did you find interesting? is that I found that it was interesting that there are so many types of languages that support learning and cultural thinking. A teacher has to be a wordsmith, and this is what you were saying, Aziz, to utilize language to the fullest potential. This can be difficult when speaking with someone that has a different mother tongue than you. And that's kind of a point that I just kind of made earlier. And then how to apply it in learning environment. That was the second question I asked you guys to address. 2 compliments in a task. When giving feedback to students, try to give them 2 compliments on specific things that they have done well, and then give them a specific task goal to work towards to improve their work. And I think that's something that we talked about in TESOL, right? In noticing errors. A student probably did more things right than they did wrong. So praise them for the things they did right. Even if them just coming to school today, for some students, that's the victory. This is why we have the warmer, because the warmer allows us to give every student a victory so they can start the class off on the right foot. So she's absolutely right. Let's look at what they have done correctly and then give them something to think about. When goal setting or giving the task, ask the student what they think they can do now to improve upon their work. So in in Jazz's and Charles and I chapter, time, that's kind of a reoccurring theme, right, Charles? This idea of ask the student what they think they can do to improve their work. This will give them ownership of their work. If they do not readily have a task available, then you can make a suggestion or 2 and let them decide which one they will focus on next. Under the subsection, the language of listening, I was reminded of one of the Adaptive School's 7 norms of collaboration, paraphrasing. Teachers and students should listen to understand one another. One way to clarify a point that someone is making is to paraphrase it back to them. And I think that's a great communication skill. I normally say, this is what I heard. This is what I heard you say. And you can get, and if you didn't say that, then you can correct me. Well, I think you heard wrong. Well, that's not what I intended. And it goes back, is the message sent, the message received. I want to go over to our chapter, time. And I'll let you start it off, Charles. What do you got to say about time?
Awesome. Thank you for that. If I can, I'd like to share my screen briefly for a second.
Sure.
Just to lead off. There's something, let's see. Can everyone see my screen?
It's coming. It's coming. Yep, got it.
All right. This meme is hilarious. I came across it literally while I was going through this over the past week. I think teaching is the only job you have to work before you get to work, so you have to work to do at work. Then because I had no time at work to do work, I have to work after work to catch up on the work I didn't do while at work. Right. If you are a teacher, I'm telling you, if you're not feeling that, I don't know what to tell you. But this chapter in particular challenged me on the idea on how we figure out time, with the beginning heading starting off with, and I quote, and I want to make sure I quote it properly as I'm opening my notes. Tons of notes on this, forgive me. The idea starting with, and I quote, the heading for time, learning to be its master rather than its victim. And I appreciated this chapter because the idea that on top of modeling, which is super important to see how this is done, because we all teach, we all do certain things, we all have practices in education for our particular institutions, but we don't see it modeled. And the teacher, Nathan, seeing everything that he had going together was laid out, and it inspired me to think about practices that I had just left by the wayside, hadn't picked back up, or was doing in the classroom versus virtually that I had not forgot. And one of the big themes is just especially assessing individual feedback sessions. Now, that's not just more for us as teachers, and we could do that within the matrix that's talked about on page 117, and 126. but specifically our students assessing us, finding out where their energy is going. If they can, with one of the examples, you're finding out, hey, this energy isn't going to something that's building me, it's feeling draining. Well, I'm neutral about it versus this is me energized. And we learn to master this by doing thoughtful activities and thoughtful practices that get ourselves energized, because we feel it when we get drained. And I know this personally. Looking at page 117, one of the things that hit me harder as a primary teacher, as an elementary school teacher, was how often do we watch our colleagues, or we go to schools, or we hear about our elementary reading classes dominated by non-reading activities, such as filling out a worksheet. I'm not saying I do that, but I witness teachers thinking that that's the crux, that's the basis of their activity. And that's draining. That takes away from what page 116 discusses, the idea of academic learning time. Because Ray made a quote earlier, and I forgot who he attributed it to, was the idea of, we do not get these kids to learn. Learning is something they do on their own. We, as educators, facilitate it. We give a safe, wholesome environment for them to do this. And when we waste time, or we put our activities and our energy into time that's draining, we lose all this good stuff. We're wasting time. We're robbing them. Another thing I had to definitely research was this idea of encoding. We hear it a lot, but in practice, it's taking in new information. When you're preparing, are you finding new ways to put proper information? Now, this is where I've reminded myself of summative assessments, page 125, managing that energy. But to be honest, when you're just trying to push through, trying to ram information down, get it done, that gets stopped by the wayside. And the kids feel it. The kids definitely feel it. And I close by highlighting the fact that the chapter gave really, really good ideas on self-assessment, not just for the teachers themselves, but the students. And the problem is we need to stop. We need to get out of this zone of being authority figures. And let me dial that up. When I say an authority figure, it's, I'm not the king of the classroom. Let me sit in front, run my mouth for 40 minutes. Here's what it is. Take it and leave it. There are way too many so-called teachers in the world that are already doing that. You're wasting time. You're stealing money. What will be better to do is accept the feedback from your students, accept the feedback from your colleagues, accept personal feedback so you'll actually grow. That's a better use of your time. So one of the things that talked about page 126 was the time management matrix. The idea of finding out, are you in a zone of quality? Is this something draining? Is it monotonous? 126 goes into depth with that, but it's definitely something that stuck with me. Or if you go toward the end of the chapter in the wrap up, it talks about doing an engaged time audit. And this is where, if we're changing the culture of how we get down, we need to stop being solo acts. Because as teachers, we make a lot of decisions on the fly. We don't have time to reflect. We don't have time to rebuild. Heck, we got every pressure in the world, whether it's your head office, whether it's your district, whether it's your ministry, saying, you need to get this done. We followed your pacing guide. You're behind. What's with your kids? But instead, the thing is that when you get your administration involved, change the idea of, hey, reach out to me. Here's some ways to help. It's real easy to blame them because a lot of times they don't really have the answers. But this ending section on time gave this great idea about an engaged time formula, having an administrator come in, or even just having a colleague taking a free period. Hey, can you come in and watch my class for 15 minutes? See, take a note of like 10, 12 students. See when they're engaged, when they're dozing off, when they're not focused, when they're doing an activity. Are they speaking? Are they interacting? And it's a super elaborate formula with it. But once you get that data in your head, because I'm with you, Ray, 100%. Education should be data driven, not standardized tests that we kill from the kids, but every day, summative assessments, building to see how we can get better. That is what drives curriculum. That's what drives this thing. So an engaged time formula, and even just reflections from the students. Make it easy. Tell them, hey, we see it in our textbooks, but we don't actually do it. I know I wasn't for online, but it's something that I want to put back into practice. Hey guys, we learned this. I don't think y'all learned it. Y'all good? Are you not good? And then honestly say, hey, I didn't teach it that well. Let me go back and do this again. So this time section for chapter 4 was very challenging, but tons of good stuff in it. And I hope to be able to utilize it later on. And
chapter 4 has really good stuff, really good practical aspects, and using the guy Nathan as a case study was quite interesting. And the only thing I want, because you hit everything on the head. One of the things I want to mention that is talked about in chapter 4 is this idea that the time that you spend and whatever you do, that's the indication of your values. You're communicating to students what you think is important. So if you spend 20 minutes in the classroom talking about yourself, what you're doing is telling your students that you are important. Now you got to match that action against what you're in the business of supposed to be doing. And as Charles says, you're wasting their time, right? So what you spend time in doing, it communicates what is important. So if the students do a lot of worksheets and you say you're going to grade it and you grade it, you're communicating to your students that worksheets are important and this is learning. So if I came into your classroom and say, Charles, are doing worksheets, does that cause learning? Does that cause higher order thinking? Your answer has to be yes, because that's what you're spending your time doing. Right? That's like saying every time I see you, you're in your yard, watering the plants and pruning the plants. I say, well, Charles, you must really like doing this. This must be really valuable. I hate doing it. No, it doesn't make any sense. Don't make any sense. So I think when we talk about time, we must ask ourselves beforehand, what's important to me as it relates to this class? And is that reflected in the course outcomes? Do you know the course outcomes for the class that you're teaching? Do you know the course outcomes? Azira,
Yeah.
what class do you teach?
I've taught grade 1 last year, but I've been teaching for about 8 years, grade 9 and
I'm gonna pick on you.
8.
I'm gonna pick on you
Go
because
ahead.
you're the reason why we're doing this, by the way. So I'm picking on you.
Okay.
You started this topic again. So you had grade 1 homeroom teacher, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that means you did many different subjects.
We were, yeah, but online they kind of integrated the science into reading classes. So we had
good. Science is reading. Science is reading. That's fine. No worries. What was the course? What was the course outcomes for that reading for that first grade class? What was your course outcomes?
Okay, because we were shifting from a private school into an IB school, we never actually went to the outcome itself. But we are doing it this summer for next year. So I've been through or gone through the outcome, but I haven't really
So course
tackled it.
outcomes is not an IB thing.
Yeah, it's like the main objective. What do I want my student by the end of the year to?
If no one gets anything out of this, backwards mapping. The backwards mapping. And backwards
Yeah.
mapping starts with why am I asking this 5-year-old? How old are you in the first grade? 6 years old. Why am I asking
6.
this 6-year-old to come to class every day, come to school 5 times a week? Why?
To learn, to
To
read and
learn what?
write,
To learn what?
to be to be able to read. That was our main
I,
objective.
schools have to define that for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, but it should be. It's one of those things where you say, "This is the outcomes that I have by the end of the year. 108 after 100 at day 180. This is what you can expect to see from my
Which is
students."
knowing the alphabets correctly, pronouncing it, um, managing or being able to um, take pronounce the word correctly, saying out the letters to form the words or to form the sentence, and so on.
So,
So
but
this was,
okay, now can we talk about that for a second? So
yeah,
you're making Charles's point now. These are a lot of hard skills.
exactly.
Pronouncing. No, I'm not saying they're not important because they're absolutely important.
But how should
But
I
let
apply
me
it
let me
in
but
the
let
class?
me ask you this. Let me ask you one thing. Could they do that without you? Without
Yeah,
a first grade teacher? So so they can learn how to pronounce A to Z without the first grade teacher, not just you or any first grade teacher.
yes, that's true.
So what is the not you because it's not personal. What
Of
is
course,
the school? What is the value of going to the first grade if they can
is making
learn those things without you?
is making sure that they learned it correctly. So during our
Is
class
it?
time would
And
be
what now? How do we learn? See now, you see now, you see the slippery slope here. What defines correctly?
correctly.
Yeah, but what
As long
defines
as he
correctly?
says
What defines correctly though? Is Pakistani English more valuable or less valuable than British English?
Okay, no, we went deep into accents. We're not going to look at accents. We were just making sure that he pronounces P instead of B. He pronounces J instead of G,
No,
and
no,
so on.
I got you, and I'm just picking with you. But the point
Yeah, yeah,
is that what we really want out of our students has to be well defined, and hopefully, it's not based strictly on hard skills. That it's based on essential skills, and we use those hard skills to illuminate and enhance essential skills. So yes, I want a student to be able to say P, pronounce the P and not say B, okay, but not as a skill within itself, but in order
yeah.
to be an effective communicator.
That's true.
So that's what I want. I want effective communication. Yes, the indicator of that, one indicator of that is being able to pronounce the P instead of the B. However, that's not the only indicator of effective communication. And that
That's
effective
true.
communication goes a lot deeper than that. It becomes emotional, right?
Him being
So
confident. Yes, yes, that's true.
confidence, things of this nature, because those are the things that are essential. Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead.
Oh, look. I'm already hyped. This is why I love being here. I love this. I got to tag back in because when they're looking at Nathan's example, one of the things that he was criticized for by his other colleagues was this idea of these individual feedback sessions. Something that he could do, that he was doing, and that he noticed in his practices that other teachers didn't want to do. They just didn't have time. So he either put it between some of his break periods. He would meet with students either after school, he would meet them earlier, and he would give them personalized advice, feedback on their writing for their personal development. Now, I say that for their social emotional learning is far more important than just the hard skills because they have to make that connection. And quoting from chapter 4, one of the things he found out that the students, when he would just write comments and give a grade, the kids wouldn't pay attention to it. It didn't develop growth. But when they brought their physical writing to the individual feedback session, whether it was one student or two students, he found out he would notice that the students would take it personal. He would sit down with them and write with them, read with them at that time to go with it. Now, that time saved him actual classroom time and less out of work time grading papers and getting the students to improve. And one of the things I want to use, and I'll share my screen one final time, this idea of the individual learning plan, the IEP, ILP, they all come with different names. They all come with different names, but it was something that I had to learn about on my own. And so in this case, going back to changing it, not just from mindset, but with your administration, getting them involved, one of the things that I know that's going to be more time consuming if we go, Lord willing, we go back to school, I'm going to have to sit down with my students. I'm going to need to make that connection. I'm going to have to truly make their learning profiles. And I'm going to have to understand that time, whether it be in class, outside of class, is going to save me a lot of headache. And when I figure out halfway through the semester that a child can't read, partway always to the end of the semester where their grades are terrible, and I got a complaint saying, how come you didn't figure this out? But then I could say, well, I've already had this. I've saved this time. And so the student gets a more personal connection about it. And for me, I'm finding better uses of my time because my students can't do that yet. They might be able to self-assess, but that's what we as educators pinpoint for them. We can hone in and fix it. So yeah, they can go on their own, and I might use the example we were talking about earlier about pronunciation. Yeah, they're going to learn that on their own. They could pick up sounds and phonemes by watching TV shows, watching Sassy Peppa Pig if they want to, just as a terrible example, but they could. But it's when they find the application, when they get time to make the application, that makes it important. And that's where we as educators can hone in on that time during our learning sessions.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the fact of time is also making the student work harder than you work. Is what I've noticed in most of the schools that teachers work harder or they consume more energy than the student themselves actually are consuming. So if we do individual work or knowing the student as an individual, we actually will save up time, also save up energy because the student would do most of the work. So you wouldn't have the um, you won't have excuse or reasoning to take your work home because you already have the work because you're working with the student. You're not working with a work or a curriculum or book. You're working with the learner himself. This is the concept that I understand as you were talking. And this is what I liked about it. I know most of you said that it's just term IB and so on, but it should be teaching. But going into schools without a term like that, schools would say, okay, we've been doing this ages. Why are we taking this new way of teaching or this new way of method? Just reminding, we're not teaching the lesson, we're teaching learners. So we should be concentrating on the student that coming to school. We shouldn't only waste the teacher's time, but also know that the student themselves should be applying what we teach in class so we would know where he actually goes wrong. So when we're talking about the outcomes, and this is what I liked about it because it was stated there throughout grades. So we have phase 1 to phase 5. So we know which is the what student should go through, the phases that he or a student should go through. But it doesn't actually give a clear age group. It just says phases. So, for instance, if we have a grade 1, a 6-year-old who actually finished phase 1, we should skip. He finished phase 1, let's go to phase 2. This is what we should work on him. So instead of saying, no, he's in grade 1, we should take the same outcome as grade or as a first grader. We're wasting your time and the child's time. This is what it kind of made it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that I mean, great person to read on this is Carol Ann Tomlinson. Carol Ann Tomlinson, and differentiation. She says you need three things to have differentiation: readiness, which you just talked about, interest, and learner profile, what Charles just talked about. That's the three things you need for differentiation. Let's see it again: readiness, interest,
And learner profile.
and learner profile. Okay, and so Charles just talked about the learner profile, and Nathan. And the great thing about time is a potpourri of all the forces. Because to your point, Azira, in order to you're going to take work home, and that goes back to Charles' first slide, the little thing he showed us, the meme he showed us. You're going to take work home because you're constantly adjusting your scope and sequencing. You're saying, okay, I got to move this, I got to move that around, I got to move this around. I thought this was going to work, but that didn't work. So I need and Muhammad needs this, and Sarah needs that, and Charles needs this, and I need to do that, and I can't do right. So that you're going to take work home.
But it would be more.
However, it should now be fun because now it's a puzzle. It's this moving puzzle. Right? So it makes the job very interesting. That's number one. Number two, a lot of Zero, you said that a lot of the teachers are working harder than students. The reason why is often the teacher's not preparing enough.
Yeah. Or they're preparing wrong.
So if you go into the classroom prepared, then now you're sitting back and you're watching and you're observing, which is another point that Charles made about bringing another teacher in. Charles, I would say you don't have to bring another teacher in. I would say this is where the tape recorder comes in, the video camera comes in, and you videotape your sessions. Now, that could be a slippery, in some schools you might not be able to do that because some people might have a problem with that. But if you can do that, videotape your sessions and go back and look. That's, again, a part of Dr. Kamara DeValu's post-method condition. Figuring out what you need to do to adjust your teaching. And back to Charles' point, and that was going to be a point I made about the individual feedback. I've read this book 3 times. This is my 3rd time reading this book now. And the individual feedback, I kind of must have just glazed over because this time I'm going to implement individual feedback from now on because of this book. No more grading papers for me absent of the student. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just not going to do it anymore. I don't know if you heard me, Charles, but I'm because of this chapter, because I've read, this is my 3rd time reading this book, okay? And I've always glazed over the individual feedback, what is it? IFS? What was it?
IFS, individual feedback sessions.
Schedule. I'm doing that from now on for the rest of my teaching. No more sitting up late at night grading papers. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm gonna, and I kind of started doing it a couple years ago, but I didn't know what I was doing. Now I know. Now I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. You follow me? I will grade papers in front of students, whether virtually or in front of face to face, and give them feedback the same way Nathan did. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back. What page is that, Charles? It's the beginning of the chapter, chapter 4. It's
okay. So the individual feedback session, if you're on the PDF, it's I'm sorry, I wrote it physical pages here.
I can go back because I'm watching on my Kindle and I don't have page number on my Kindle.
Okay, so if you're looking at the physical pages, you're looking at the physical pages in the on the actual file, go to page 105. 105.
So somewhere around 105, I challenge everyone to go and look at individual feedback schedule, IFS. It is, you're talking about time. It's a great way to save time, especially if you're the upper grade. If you're teaching high school or maybe middle school, but especially high school, wow. And especially if you're teaching university, you should do this. No more grading papers for me absent of the student. And another policy I'm going to change is all my work now will be due during that individual feedback schedule. No more upload it. You bring it to me, or you send it to email during the virtual set, or you share your screen. Okay, because I want that personalized interaction with my students. I think I told you guys before, I'm doing my dissertation on learner profiling, so it only makes sense that I do this because this is what my dissertation is in. And this is a way to continuously learn a profile, is because you get to know whether your student can read, Jazz. You don't wait, you're not waiting to the end of the year to, oh, I didn't know they didn't know how to read. I didn't know my student was dyslexic. Now you're spending some one-on-one time. And if you work in a university, you could take class time to do that. I know you can't do that in the, you probably can't do that in a K to 12 setting. You could, but you would have to have some team teaching going on. But it's important. So I would challenge people, can you make the time to do IFS with your learners? Even if it's 5 minutes every month. Can you, that's five, let's say you had 25 students, right? 5 times 25 is what? 125 minutes? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you, so 125 minutes, that's 2 hours and 5 minutes? Am my math right? Can you find 2 hours and 5 minutes a month to sit down with every student? If you have 20 students, can you find 2 hours and 5 minutes a month just to go over an assignment?
I'd actually like to tag team and say, because I am in K through 12, the application you use it is, let's say, I mean, how many of us are actually do parent teacher conferences throughout the year, meet the teacher events? And we always try to tell them to make it one-on-one, reach out to us, send emails, and they always want to know about their child. And I can personally tell you, I got annoyed with some colleagues on my team, and it's like they're just sides on it. The only thing they got is well, I'm looking at your child's grade. He has an A, so he must be really good. And I know the parents don't like to be patronized like that.
Right.
But when I have a meeting, a lot of them, though some of them were upset, would say things like, so how come you have all this data? What do you mean you know that my son can't read past a third grade level? He has A's since kindergarten. What makes you so important? He has
Right.
A's in Arabic, Islamic, KSA. What do you mean you know that he has no comprehension? He's struggling with math. And then I pull out the data. And I'm saying, this is me sitting with your child. This is me doing his fluency test. This is him sitting in front of me telling a story or reading to me. This is what I've recorded. And I only need 10 minutes to do it.
Right.
Give me 10 minutes with my 25 to 30 students in my classroom, and we crush all doubt. So we know where to push.
I would challenge if you could spend 5 minutes every month with your students, either virtually or face to face. And like Charles just said, give them something to read on a first grade level. And second grade, it could be 2 sentences. And see if they can read it. Ask the next meeting, ask them to write a simple sentence. If they're younger, ask them to write their name. See if they can make a capital letter and a lowercase letter. Just one-on-one, not in a group setting. Ask them to draw you a picture. Ask them how they feel about this. If there's upper grades, ask them about a current event. See where their critical thinking lies, the higher order skills. What do you think about the situation that's going on in Israel and Gaza and Palestine right now? Ask and see if they are aware. Spending this time asking them, what do you want out of life? What do you need? What are your expectations?
That is very important, Ray. This is exactly what I wanted to add at the end of expectations, that personalization is very important. What is it in me for me? So they should be able to relate with what we are talking. So for that, we have to give them time. We have to find their interest and correlate our methods with their interests so that they can, when they come to our classroom, they have an interest and they are interested to listen to us. That is very important.
I agree. I agree. Absolutely. What's in it for me? You hit it. We all have an amygdala. We all have an amygdala. And that amygdala wants to know what's in it for me. Personalization. All right. We're kind of running over time here. Rachel, is Rachel still here? Rachel? Did Rachel leave?
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Rachel,
here.
you want to
Yeah,
present your chapter really quick? Your thoughts?
okay, yeah, I think so much have been said, and chapter 5 was all about modeling, and we are good in this. We think we have done this before in our classes. So if you would allow me to share something very quick.
Sure.
Um, okay, I think I can share. Okay, am I sharing?
It's coming.
So modeling, how do we see ourselves through our students' eyes? How do we describe an instruction or demonstrate something, and the students are going to acquire the knowledge? I hope I'm sharing it.
Yep, we got it. Looks good.
I can see it.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah. So what I found most interesting about this is that in modeling, we are going to allow students to observe our teaching processes, and we are going to engage them to imitate on something that we're going to share with them, as well as Ms. Aziza said, it's going to help us to reduce our workload. Not just also outside the classroom. Live modeling to our students. It's going to allow our students to see how they can formulate an assignment or an argument. Also, it's going to enable us as teachers to analyze and to evaluate our strengths and our weaknesses. So, how do we apply these methods? Okay, there are different ways how we can apply this. The first thing is, how are we going to be role models? Being role models of learning and thinking. This is what we call it's called dispositional apprenticeship. So here the teachers, they're going to convey personal value or ways of thinking. So for example, here the teacher is gonna give a task, like ask students to design an eco home for the future. So the teacher is going to display something like this, like a diagram, and tell the students what features the house would include, like giving them an example diagram. And we can also use the gradual release of responsibility method, the modeling. This is for independence. So this is followed up in 3 stages, where the teacher is going to model the skill and take all the responsibilities as the students watch. Then after that, the teacher and the students are going to share those responsibilities. Then the teacher now is going to allow the students to learn independently or to practice that skill by their own as she masters the whole unit or the whole process. Then we can also do it by interactive way where they're going to learn through examples or practices and and the reflection of it. So the first thing is by stating the purpose or briefly what you will model and why. And then model the behavior, which is actually what you expect the students to do it. And here, I think the teacher here is not going to describe what he's doing unless there's a need for it. And then explicit discussions. So you're going to ask the students what they notice, what are they seeing, and then students model what the teacher modeled. Here you're going to invite like one student and ask the student to model the same way that the teacher did. Then discussion of what was noticed in that model. The students ask the student what they noticed. Their modelers model. I hope that makes sense.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Then practicing by the students. Here, the teacher can have all the students model, while myself as a teacher, I'm going to observe and guide them. Then I'm going to give feedback to the group. Now, when it comes to giving feedback, we should try to give them positive actions that we notice. But at the same time, when students go off track, at least we should try to direct them respectfully, because some of the students are very sensitive, especially my grades. They are really. So that is all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Rachel. That was very, very important. Very important.
Dr. Ray,
Yes.
this is Ulfat. May I add something?
Sure.
Last year, during the pandemic, all the schools were what? The students were not present at school. So we started with the gradual release of the responsibility. I do, we do, you do. And it worked well with us. First, the teacher will give the model, I do. Then we divide the students into group, you do. Then we have one student who's going to present or to answer. And it worked very well with us. Thank you, Doctor.
No, absolutely. That's a routine. That's an instructional routine that should be implemented in everyone's instruction somehow, some variation or some iteration of that. And it goes back to time. Do you want to put the time to do that? Because that could be a whole lesson, and that's great. Because the teacher models, students practice. Great. Spend all week doing that. That's a good thing. But modeling is key. And I want to say something else. Everything we do should be modeling. How we talk to our colleagues in front of our students, but even when they're not away, when we're not in front of our students. But everything we do, how we come into the building. Are you dropping trash? Okay. How do you talk to the cleaners, the janitors, the custodians, the cleaners? Are you yelling at them? Are you bullying them? Everything we do, the students are watching, and then they're going to mimic what you do. Or you lose value when you're trying to give them certain lessons and tell them certain things. If you yourself are not practicing that routine. So modeling is key, and that's something that we we should remember, and something that Horace Mann talked a lot about. I think we did all chapters, right? We did chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5, right? So I think so. That means we are trudging along in this book. I think I'm gonna do something different because I don't want this to be a chore on everyone. What I'm gonna try to do for chapter. So we have chapter 6, right? We're gonna try to do chapter 6 and chapter 7. What I'm gonna do for chapter 6 and chapter 7 is see if I can get a guest speaker. How about that? All right. So I don't want it every time we have homework to do. So, but I want to try to get a guest speaker for chapter 6 and chapter 7. So look out for that guest speaker. That should be interesting. So tell your friends. Next week we'll have a guest speaker on chapter 6 and chapter 7. Well, thank everyone. If Yasmin watches this, thank you, Yasmin, for your input. Does anyone have any final words, questions, comments? Thank you, everyone. Do me a quick favor. I just need to remember who was here. I keep on forgetting to take attendance. But just send me a WhatsApp saying I was here. And Amber is here. And Hannah, Miss Ofat, Rachel is okay. I think I got everyone, but just send me a quick WhatsApp. Say I was here for the session, because remember, you do get a certificate for this. Okay. Miss Ofat, I have your TESOL certificate if you want it.
Yes, I called you last week, but I
Yeah,
think
I know.
you were.
I know. Then I got super busy.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to call you after this session. Is this okay with you?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. We'll see everyone next Monday. Be there or be square. We'll have a guest speaker.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Next week, the meeting will be again on Ring, or it will be on Zoom.
Say that one more time.
Next week, the meeting will be on Zoom or on Ring.
I'm testing. What I was saying was I'm testing. I'm trying to figure out where I want to spend my money. Basically, the university account they have degraded my account. So anytime I have more than 3 people on, it goes into the 40-minute mode, even though I have still some premium features. So that's not going to work. So now Ray Roberts has to spend money out of his pocket. So I want to see if Zoom is actually the best option. Right now, it does look like the best option, but I wanted to try this out. This wasn't a bad experience, actually. It doesn't have.
I think it is clear and good.
Yeah, this is not a bad experience. So we may stay here. I might pay for the premium version because this is the free.
The only problem is here because some of the people who were not in the group were joining before, and I wasn't able to inform them. And when I informed them last minute, obviously because I did not know, they were not able to download it. It took me 10 minutes to download this one because I got the wrong one. Then I deleted them, and then this one and all that stuff. So.
I will be more. I will figure this video conferencing thing out.
All right.
Before next week.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you, everyone. Great input. Aziza. I don't know why I want to call you Azira. Aziza, thank you. Hannah, Miss Ofat, Amber, and Charles, man, you knocked it out of the park. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. Thank you.
No doubt. Appreciate you. Glad to be here.
We'll see you next week. Special guest next week.
Inshallah.